House of the Dragon quietly stole one of Hugh Hammer's darkest moments during the Dance of the Dragons. Now, though the show pinned Ulf White as the ultimate betrayer, who went rogue and attacked both the Greens and Blacks and ruined the town of Tumbleton in fire and blood, Hugh was equally responsible for the Blacks' defeat in that battle. And no, George R.R. Martin didn't write Hugh as a loving husband who searched for his wife during the battle. Cat's character was an original creation by the showrunner, which did give Hugh some depth, but also robbed him of his aggression during the First Battle of Tumbleton. In some ways, the book depicted Hugh as an unlikable man whose judgment got overshadowed by a prophecy and brought about his end. So, how exactly did all of that happen? Well, let's find out in this video. Hugh Hammer, also known as Lord Hammer, was a dragonseed like Ulf White. He was known for being extremely powerful, and the description that he had hands strong enough to bend steel bars justified why he was also known as Hard Hugh. Hugh was huge and tall, and was easily recognizable for wielding a war hammer. However, being an illegitimate Targaryen, Hugh was just known as a blacksmith bastard and never had the privilege of learning to read or write. Fans speculate that Princess Sarah Targaryen, who was a rebellious daughter of King Jaehaerys I and Queen Alysanne, was Hugh's mother, and the show more or less established that. Sarah was exiled to Oldtown, from where she fled to Lys, and apparently worked at a pleasure house there. However, Martin kept Hugh's parentage far more ambiguous, and all we know is that he was Targaryen enough to claim a dragon, Vermithor, when Prince Jaehaerys Velaryon called on various dragonseeds to try and mount the unclaimed Vermithor and Silverwing. The fact that he could ride Vermithor, which was the late King Jaehaerys' dragon, further fuels the idea that Hugh might indeed have been his grandson. During the Battle of the Gullet, Hugh Hammer fought bravely alongside Prince Jaehaerys, and as we all know, that battle was won by the Blacks. However, Jaehaerys Velaryon and his dragon Vermax died during the Battle of the Gullet, and the casualties on both sides were horrific. Hugh, however, didn't really care about any of that and drowned in his own glory. He and Ulf celebrated their participation in a victorious battle, and just like Daemon wanted Ulf to be married to the daughter of Lord Stokeworth, he had a wife in mind for Hugh too. Prince Daemon Targaryen advised Rhaenyra that Hugh should be wed to the daughter of late Lord Rosby, but once again, she declined and settled for a knighthood for her new dragon riders. Now, Hugh always showed violent tendencies, and from Mushroom's account, we learn that Hugh reportedly beat one of Rhaenyra's knights to death in a quarrel over a maiden in the Street of Silk. There were literally signs from the universe that Queen Rhaenyra shouldn't trust anyone as volatile and bloodthirsty as Hugh Hammer, but she turned a blind eye to his actions as long as she knew that she could use Hugh as a tool on a dragon. After Rhaenyra turned down the marriage proposal Daemon had in mind, the rogue prince once again tried to reason with Rhaenyra about giving Hugh Hammer something more than just some land on Driftmark, and proposed giving him Casterly Rock if he helped to crush down House Baratheon and House Lannister for their support of Aegon Targaryen II. However, after Lord Corlys didn't approve of this idea, Rhaenyra too rejected it, and soon it was time for the Battle of Tumbleton, an incident that changed the fate of Rhaenyra's reign in the book. When news of Lord Ormond Hightower and his army approaching from the Reach towards King's Landing reached Rhaenyra, she knew she had to defend Tumbleton, the seat of House Footley, and the Queen's last major loyal stronghold. So she immediately ordered Hugh Hammer, who can now be called Sir Hugh Hammer, and Ulf White to fly on their dragons, Vermithor and Silverwing, and defend Tumbleton against Ormond's approaching army. No one really knew what went through Hugh and Ulf's minds at that point, but both the dragonseeds chose to flip sides and turned on the Blacks. The most probable answer is that Hugh, like Ulf, was consumed by the greed for power and realized he was literally riding the second largest dragon during the Civil War. That's a huge amount of power for a man who spent his life as a lowborn, knowing he was a Targaryen bastard but not able to do anything about it. However, when Hugh soared over Tumbleton with the reins of Vermithor in his hands, he figured he could be anything he wanted. He was a Targaryen after all. Consequently, his ego and ambitions got out of hand. When Hugh and Ulf appeared on their dragons, Rhaenyra's loyalists at Tumbleton thought they would easily win the battle. Firstly, the Greens' defense was breaking. Ormond Hightower died, and most importantly, though the Greens had a dragon, Prince Daeron's Tessarion, she was much smaller and less experienced when it came to battle compared to Vermithor or Silverwing. However, within moments their relief turned to shock and despair because both the dragonseeds betrayed the Blacks and burned their men. They literally reduced Tumbleton to ashes, and thousands of men died either by dragonfire or drowning while trying to cross the Mander. Ultimately, Rhaenyra's defenders had to open the gates of Tumbleton to the Green forces, but since they were now leaderless after Ormond's death, the men descended into anarchy. They sacked the town, abused the women, and got drunk and killed many men. The Greens even looted homes and shops and didn't spare the Septas or Silent Sisters either. When Prince Daeron Targaryen was frustrated by the behavior of his army, he tried to convince them, including Sir Hugh Hammer, to continue their march towards King's Landing. However, Hugh was reluctant to do so. When news of unrest in King's Landing reached the Green Army, younger nobles like Sir Roger Corn, Sir John Roxton, and Lord Unwin Peake stated that it was the perfect opportunity to advance towards King's Landing. But Sir Hobart sensed something was deeply wrong with Hugh and Ulf and advised the Greens to be careful about the two betrayers. While Ulf was drowning himself in wine and women, Hugh was plotting something much bigger. This was the point where Hugh started calling himself Lord Hammer and learned about the prophecy. As you probably already know, prophecies and Targaryens are a deadly combination, and that proved to be the case for Hugh as well. The prophecy said that a new king will arise once a hammer falls on a dragon, and Hugh seemed to match the description. Thus, he gained support from the soldiers who also believed in the prophecy, and he told his supporters, "Why be a lord when you can be a king?" That's right, Hugh now believed that he was the promised king, and the vision talked about his hammer, metaphorically, and he was determined to claim the Iron Throne for himself. Meanwhile, the Green faction was getting so reckless, and Rhaenyra's rule in King's Landing was being constantly questioned, causing unrest. So the Greens wanted to declare a new king. Obviously, their choice was King Viserys Targaryen and Queen Alicent Hightower's third son, Prince Daeron Targaryen, but Hugh was absolutely not buying that proposition. He claimed that King's Landing needed someone strong and mighty to rule the people, and went so far as to tell the Greens, "We need a strong man to lead us, not a boy. The throne should be mine." To stand before the legitimate son of King Viserys Targaryen and his supporters, Hugh had the audacity to claim the Iron Throne, which obviously infuriated the knights and lords of Oldtown. Prince Daeron Targaryen was scandalized and felt extremely disrespected when Hugh Hammer made his claim to the throne. He was known to throw wine on his face, but Hugh had the nerve to threaten Daeron and tell him that he would beat him. When Sir John Roxton demanded on what basis Hugh was making such a massive claim, he said that his right to the throne was the same as Aegon Targaryen I, aka Aegon the Conqueror, and that right was his dragon. And it was pretty hard to argue with him because he was riding Vermithor. After the altercation with Prince Daeron, Hugh left, but the nobles realized what a huge threat he had become. The next day, they all found Hugh wearing a black iron crone, and an angry Roger Corn told him, "A crown does not make a man a king. You should wear a horseshoe on your head, blacksmith." He couldn't stand the sight of Hugh wearing a crown and knocked it off of Hugh's head, which caused him to nail 3 horseshoes into Roger's skull. Though Corn's supporters tried to intervene, 3 of them ended up dead, while 12 others were left wounded. After this incident, Lord Unwin Peake managed to convince a reluctant Sir Hobart Hightower to gather more lords and knights against Hugh and Ulf to organize a coup to kill them. As a result, the Caltrops were formed with Lord Peake, Hobart Hightower, and 11 other nobles who supported the cause. They held a secret meeting in the cellar of a Tumbleton inn and started hatching a plan to kill them. However, they knew that that would be a difficult task since Hugh Hammer was always surrounded by his minions. The Caltrops got Prince Daeron into their hiding spot and got his permission to execute the 2 betrayers. However, the day the Caltrops were supposed to put an end to Hugh and his outrageous claims happened to mark the beginning of the Second Battle of Tumbleton. It was led by Adam of Hull on his dragon Seasmoke, whose dragonfire burnt down the Greens' camps. Hugh Hammer, who was awakened by the sounds of battle in the middle of the night, rushed towards the stable to Mount Vermithor. In his mind, he was already a king, and what better way was there to prove his worthiness? But before he could even get near Vermithor, Jon gave Hugh his condolences, and when a baffled Hammer asked for what, Sir John Roxton coldly replied, "You died in the battle." Before Hugh could wrap his head around that, Sir John Roxton put his Valyrian steel blade, the Orphan Maker, through Hugh. Finally, Hugh was dead, but Sir Roxton too ended up dying. Apparently, he slipped on one of Hugh Hammer's entrails, and the latter's loyal men killed Jon. After the death of Hugh Hammer, Vermithor was left riderless and got attacked by scores of knights. He killed a lot of them, but when the other dragons, namely Seasmoke and Tessarion, came into the scene, Vermithor found himself ambushed. He went against Seasmoke and seized his head. However, when the Bronze Fury tried to take flight into the sky, his wings were damaged from the fight, and they were unable to support his huge body, so he fell and died. It's kind of a shame that that's how Vermithor goes out, because he was one of the biggest and most valuable dragons for the Blacks. Now, the thing is, the show has softened Hugh Hammer into a grieving family man, and I'm not really sure if the makers will turn him into the dangerous person he was in the pages of George R.R. Martin's novel. In fact, even if he does turn against Rhaenyra in the last season, audiences will never hate Hugh because Kat's death will now justify his feelings of frustration and could very well sow the seeds of betrayal. That means we might not get to see Hugh Hammer as the sheer madman and selfish betrayer he was in the books, and his brutal actions will now be seen as a mere consequence of a heartbroken man who lost everything. As much as I love Kieran Boo's performance, I'm absolutely going to miss the wrathful traitor Hugh was in the books. Sadly though, guys, that's all we got for today. Every time I see Hugh Hammer on the screen, it feels like he carries a sense of dread along with him, because every book reader knows what he's really capable of. However, I'm also afraid that Book Hugh will never make it onto the screen, and even if we see him being cruel and vindictive, we'll know deep down that Rhaenyra herself was quietly responsible for making a monster out of him. That said, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because that's the best way to see more videos like it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see ya in the next one.